Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into something pretty fascinating.
We are. It's a look at a very high-level English speaker who's practicing for the IELTS exam.
Right, and not just the practice itself, but the really detailed feedback they got from an expert afterwards.
And it's about more than just passing a test. It really opens up into communication, how we adapt personally.
And self-reflection, too. It's quite deep, actually.
Definitely. The source covers a lot. I mean, from their everyday life, how they feel about tech.
To some really big personal challenges, like moving to a new country, adapting to different cultures, stuff like that.
And that expert feedback running through it all, it's like a lens, isn't it? It shows us common communication habits, things we do well, maybe things we don't even notice.
Yeah, exactly. So our mission here is to unpack all of that, pull out the most useful bits so you feel really clued in on how these ideas, language, adaptation, communication, all kind of link together.
Okay, let's get started.
So let's begin with the speaker's world, sort of the everyday things they talked about first, like belongings.
Yes, they had a clear preference there. Fewer things, they said it's more easier to deal with.
Which makes sense. They gave that example, didn't they? Laptop, iPad, phone, feeling like it's just, too much of the same sort of device.
Yeah.
An overload.
It is interesting, though, wanting simplicity, but then immediately saying what they absolutely couldn't live without.
Right. Phone, water, and their cats.
Can't forget the cats. It shows that balance maybe between wanting minimalism and needing practical things, or, emotional connections.
And they threw in that little detail about organizing books by color. Mm-hmm. It's small, but it paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does. Gives you a sense of their personal style. Then there was technology.
Yeah, the classic double-edged sword thing.
Exactly. On the one hand, hugely positive. Connecting with friends far away, networking for work or business.
Sharing creative stuff like music or art on social media. They really saw the upside there, especially compared to the past.
For sure. But there was definitely this other side, wanting less tech overall.
Mm-hmm. Worries about AI taking over jobs, wanting to be less dependent.
So they get the benefits, absolutely, but there's this caution too, maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed by it all.
Okay, shifting from external stuff to more personal habits.
Yeah.
Reading came up.
Right. They enjoy it, self-help books particularly, but felt they don't do enough.
And blame technology, basically. Saying it eats into reading time compared to when they were a kid.
That's so relatable for so many people now, isn't it? That constant pull of the screen.
Totally. It links right back to that tech thing. Helpful, but also a distraction.
Then outdoor activities.
Yeah, they listed quite a few things they like. Running, yoga in the morning.
By the beach. Sounded nice.
Definitely. Group classes too. Swimming, just being near the ocean.
Yeah.
But then the reality check.
The weather. Hot and humid where they are, so they don't actually get outside as much as they'd like.
And what about how they like being outdoors? That was specific.
Oh, yeah. Preferring to be alone for space. Connecting with themselves, getting away from people because... What was that great phrase?
Their social battery dies very quickly. Loved that.
Me too. So honest. They did say both solo and group time have benefits, but they shared that story about the solo trip to England.
Right, just being alone in nature, walking around the city.
And finding you learn a lot that way, that quiet reflection time.
And they weren't stopping there. Future plans included paragliding and skiing.
So definitely up for a challenge.
Which actually is a perfect lead-in to the deeper stuff they talked about, adaptation, growth.
Yeah, this was a really core part of their responses. A big one was moving abroad for university right after high school.
They said they chose to go abroad for the resources, the opportunities. Makes sense.
But wow, the start sounded really tough. Struggling to fit in, different culture, different ways of thinking.
Yeah, feeling out of place. And in their specific degree, art, feeling like they didn't have the same experience as others.
It got quite intense. They mentioned crying in class, having breakdowns. That's significant.
But the takeaway was key. Learning to just keep pushing through.
Reframing it, seeing it as a learning experience, and realizing that after, a year or two, you do start to acclimate, to adapt properly.
Which got them thinking about why change is hard generally.
Yeah, suggesting we humans just don't like change. We prefer stability, the familiar.
And they linked it to programs set up in our brains during childhood.
Right, like default settings. And straying from those patterns can trigger that primal fight or flight response.
Makes you feel stressed, want to run away or resist.
Exactly. That ancient survival wiring kicking in when things feel unfamiliar or uncertain.
They also had some really good thoughts on cultural adaptation specifically. Like, why do some people handle it better?
They felt it's about finding a culture that just clicks, that fits them more as a person, as a soul.
Being open, trying to empathize with locals, embracing the new stuff.
And when you find that sense of freedom or belonging, you naturally start adopting that new lifestyle.
But they were also realistic. Some values in a culture just won't resonate with you personally.
And they shared that really personal example, didn't they? Moving from America after their degree.
Yeah, because they felt a couple of values in that culture I didn't resonate with, and needing to find somewhere that felt more in coherence.
That takes guts and a lot of self-awareness.
And maybe the most powerful point they made was about how facing challenges helps you grow.
Fundamentally, yeah. It forces you to listen to yourself more, to follow your gut.
Their belief was really strong. Nobody grows without pain. Seeing pain as a big life teacher.
Helping you become a better version of yourself, that reframing of pain is, well, it's pretty profound.
Instead of just something bad to avoid, it becomes this engine for transformation. Difficulty as an opportunity.
Yeah, really powerful perspective.
Okay, so let's switch gears now. From all that deep personal stuff to the expert feedback on their communication during the test practice.
Right, and this feedback is super useful, not just for tests, but for everyday communication principles.
So what were the strengths? The expert pointed out quite a few.
Pronunciation, first off. Band 9, described as amazing, even perfect.
Wow, okay. What made it so good?
Clarity, mainly. It sounded like a standard American accent, which helps people understand globally.
Yeah.
And importantly, it didn't sound forced, it sounded natural.
Right.
Plus, excellent use of all the technical bits, intonation, connected speech, word stress, to really get the meaning across.
Let's quickly break those down. Intonation is like the melody of your voice, right? Rising for questions, falling for statements.
Exactly. Connected speech is how words flow together smoothly, like native speakers do. And word stress is emphasizing the right part of the word.
Got it. And the speaker did all that really well.
Masterfully, according to the expert. Even little things like their voice rising and falling naturally when they were listening things.
Nice. Okay, what else? Vocabulary.
Also band 9, also amazing. The expert loved one phrase in particular.
Which one?
Draining a social battery.
Ah, yeah, that's a great one.
It is. The expert called it poetic, precise, economical, and elegant.
Economical meaning it says a lot with few words.
Exactly. Captures that whole complex idea of introverted energy levels in social settings really vividly, but efficiently.
It really makes you appreciate those kinds of phrases, doesn't it? The ones that just perfectly nail an idea.
Absolutely. Finding language that's both rich and concise, that's a real skill.
Okay, so pronunciation, vocabulary. What about grammar?
Also, band 9, the expert mentioned tiny little slips, but said they happen very infrequently.
And stress, that's normal.
Totally normal, yeah. Even for native speakers. Crucially, it doesn't tank your score because they look at the totality of your performance.
Right, the overall picture, not just tiny mistakes.
So overall, incredibly strong performance in those areas.
But there's always a but, isn't there? One area was flagged for improvement.
Fluency. Still good, but called the weakest area, and the reasons why are actually really insightful for anyone wanting to speak more smoothly.
Okay, what were the reasons?
First one, nerves, especially at the start, leading to those audible pauses or fillers like like kinda.
Pretty common, I guess.
Very common, especially under pressure, but reducing them obviously helps the flow.
Makes sense.
What else? Second, a tendency towards overthinking. Trying too hard to find the absolute best idea rather than one that's just easy to talk about.
Getting stuck in your head.
Exactly. The expert said the cogs in your brain were working overtime, which naturally slows down speech. The key reminder, it's a speaking test, not an ideas test.
Good point. Focus on the language, not intellectual perfection. And the third thing,
Sometimes thinking and speaking at the exact same time and occasionally repeating the question back.
which also slows things down.
Yeah, and it doesn't really showcase your English skills effectively.
Okay, so those were the issues. What was the advice for improving fluency?
Pretty practical stuff. Preparation naturally helps calm those initial nerves.
And simplify your ideas. Pick topics or angles you're comfortable with, things that are just easier to discuss.
And a great tip, give yourself a second to think before you start speaking.
Instead of repeating the question.
Right. Use a little phrase like, that's an interesting question. Or, let me think about that for a moment. Buys you time without sounding hesitant.
Clever. What else?
Use more examples. This is a big one.
Why examples?
Because they're often easier to talk about, they're concrete, usually personal, plus they really help the listener or the examiner understand your point. They're a key communications tool.
Like the speaker's own examples crying in college, the American values thing. Those made their points really clear.
Exactly. Those personal stories are powerful. The advice was basically, imagine you're explaining it to someone who knows nothing about it. You'll naturally use more examples.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
Any other tips?
Just framing it differently in your mind. Think of it as a conversation, not a performance, like chatting with a friend in a coffee shop.
Takes the pressure off.
Hopefully. And remembering again that the score is based on the totality. Don't sweat a few early stumbles.
Okay, so if we step back and connect the dots here, it's really interesting how the speaker's personal reflections on dealing with challenges kind of line up with the communication advice.
It really is. That resilience they talked about, keep pushing through when moving abroad, feeling lost.
That's the same kind of mental toughness you need to manage nerves in a test, or just articulate yourself clearly when you feel under pressure.
Definitely. And the advice to simplify ideas for better fluency. It mirrors the speaker's own preference for simplicity in their life, like with their belongings.
Yeah, the desire for things to be manageable, less overwhelming. Seems consistent.
Whether it's physical stuff or how you communicate, and that idea of pain as a teacher.
It fits perfectly with using feedback, doesn't it? Even feedback pointing out a weakest area. You take it as a tool for growth.
Exactly. Embracing the difficult bits, whether personal struggles or communication tweaks, that's how you develop.
So, quite a journey we've taken. From looking at how someone navigates their daily life, their tech habits,
Through these really deep experiences of adaptation, finding cultural identity,
and landing on these very practical, but also quite profound insights into communicating effectively, all thanks to that expert feedback.
it really shows how linked our inner world, our experiences, our resilience is to how we express ourselves outwardly.
And how valuable reflection and feedback are, not just for tests, but just for, well, getting through life better.
That ongoing process of adapting, learning.
And maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener, to kind of chew on. Thinking about the speaker adapting themselves to new situations and the expert advising adapting communication for clarity. How does changing yourself internally affect how you talk and connect?
And turning it around could consciously working on how you communicate actually help you navigate those big life changes and challenges more effectively.
Something to mull over.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll be back soon with another one.